The SOS did not arrive as sound. There was no voice, no words, no language at all. It arrived as a distortion, an impossibility in the smooth mathematical perfection of interstellar space. A rhythmic collapse in subspace harmonics, repeating every 13 seconds, carrying with it a signature so raw and panicked that even automated systems flagged it as something alive. At first, the galaxy ignored it. The signal originated beyond the inner trade spiral, far from established lanes, in a region most civilizations marked with a single word: unprofitable. Sparse stars, no known megastructures, no strategic value. Whatever was screaming out there, the great powers reasoned, would either resolve itself or die quietly. The Galactic Concordance Council logged it, archived it, moved on. But humanity did not. On the bridge of the HFS Resolute, Captain Mara Cade stood motionless as the signal replayed for the 17th time. The lights were low, the crew quiet. Even the ship's AI had suspended non-essential processes, as if instinctively recognizing the gravity of what they were hearing. "It's not automated," said Commander Elias Trent, voice subdued. "There's modulation decay consistent with organic panic responses. Whoever sent this knew they were running out of time." "Can we identify the species?" Cade asked. Trent shook his head. "Too degraded. But it's old Concordance standard emergency formatting. Someone out there believed help would come." Cade's jaw tightened. "How long since first transmission?" 16 hours, ship time. About 3 standard days, galactic frame. Around them, the Resolute drifted alongside the rest of the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet, 12 human warships, massive and inelegant compared to the sleek designs favored by older spacefaring species. Their hulls bore scars, not ceremonial filigree. Their weapons were visible, unapologetic, built by a species that had clawed its way off a violent world and never quite stopped preparing for the next disaster. Humanity was new to the galaxy. Not young, they had been traveling the stars for nearly 2 centuries, but new in the sense that mattered to the Concordance. They were not yet powerful enough to be feared, nor ancient enough to be respected. Deathworlders, the others called them. A label spoken with polite disdain. Human worlds were loud, tectonically unstable, biologically aggressive. Their evolutionary history read like a survival horror archive. Most species evolved from environments that rewarded cooperation, equilibrium, and caution. Humans evolved from a planet that tried to kill them daily. That alone had earned them curiosity. Their rapid technological growth earned them suspicion. Their habit of arming civilian ships earned them quiet alarm. But they had never overstepped. Humanity joined the Concordance peacefully. They followed trade law. They limited fleet expansion. They accepted patrol zones far from the galactic core. They listened more than they spoke. Some called it wisdom. Others called it weakness. Council response, Cade asked. Trent brought up the transmission log. None. Automated acknowledgement only. No fleet movements registered from any major power. Cade exhaled slowly. Then we're the closest. Yes, ma'am, by 12 hours at FTL burn. And if we divert? Trent hesitated. we'd be entering contested influence space, technically under Vyak's Dominion oversight. The name carried weight. The Vyaks were ancient, older than most stellar civilizations still active. Their empire spanned thousands of systems, enforced by fleets that had never known defeat. They were not openly hostile, but their philosophy was simple: order through dominance. Lesser species survived by knowing when not to interfere. Cade stared at the holographic starfield. Somewhere in that darkness, something was dying. "Signal priority?" she asked quietly. Trent met her eyes. "Maximum." That settled it. "Helm," Cade said. "Alter course, we're responding." A murmur rippled across the bridge, not fear but anticipation, purpose. The Resolute's engines flared, and one by one, the rest of the Third Fleet followed, massive hulls bending spacetime as they accelerated toward the echo in the void. 3 hours into the burn, the first warning arrived. A tight beam transmission cut across their comms, encoded in flawless concordance high script. "This region is under VIREX protectorate. Turn back." No greeting, no explanation. Captain Cade didn't respond immediately. She let the message linger, unread, as if weighing it against something heavier. Finally, she said, "Open channel, standard diplomatic reply." The words transmitted cleanly. "Human expeditionary fleet responding to active distress signal. Intent, rescue and evacuation. No territorial claim implied." The response was immediate. "Intervention is unauthorized. The situation is contained." Contained. Cade glanced at the signal data still pulsing on her display. Frantic, decaying scream of something very much not contained. "Ask them who sent the SOS," she said. The reply took longer this time. "Classified." That was when the first doubts crept in, not among the humans, but among the assumptions they'd carried since joining the galaxy. "What aren't they telling us?" Trent muttered. Before Cade could answer, the sensor officer spoke up. "Captain, long-range scans coming in. Multiple capital-grade energy signatures near the signal origin." "How many?" A pause, then "a lot." The image resolved slowly as the fleet closed distance. What emerged from the darkness was not a battle. It was an execution. A vast alien habitat, once a glittering lattice of rotating rings and light, hung broken and burning. Entire sections were missing, torn away by precision strikes. Dozens of smaller vessels fled in chaotic patterns, pursued and annihilated by disciplined, methodical fire. And surrounding it all, the unmistakable geometry of a Vyek suppression fleet. "This was never about containment," Trent said coldly. "No," Cade replied, "this was about silence." Another transmission came through, this one sharper. "Human fleet, withdraw immediately. This matter does not concern you." Cade straightened, eyes locked on the dying megastructure. "Signal source?" she asked. The sensor officer's voice cracked slightly. "Inside the habitat, Captain, deep core, whatever's left of it." Cade closed her eyes for a heartbeat. Humanity had spent decades convincing the galaxy they were reasonable. restrained, safe. They had done so by choice. She opened her eyes. All ships, she said, voice steady and calm, reduced to sublight, hold position. The Viox fleet shifted, subtle, predatory. Cade leaned forward. Prepare a response, she said, and route the SOS to every recorder we have. Trent frowned. Ma'am. If the galaxy won't listen, she said quietly, then it's about to hear. The dying signal pulsed again, fainter now, weaker than before. And for the first time since humanity reached the stars, the question was no longer whether they were strong enough to intervene, but whether they were willing to accept what would happen if they did. The Viox fleet did not fire. They didn't need to. Their ships hung in space like judgment incarnate, vast, symmetrical constructs of obsidian alloy and radiant energy veins, each one a monument to inevitability. Their weapons were charged, not aimed. It was a posture perfected over millennia. We could end this at any moment. Across the void, the human Third Expeditionary Fleet held position, engines idling, weapons cold. From a purely tactical standpoint, it was absurd. The Viox outnumbered them 3-1, and their technological advantage, at least as catalogued by the Concordance, was overwhelming. But the catalogue was outdated. Captain Mara Cade stood with her hands clasped behind her back, eyes never leaving the ruined habitat, rotating slowly on her forward display. Fires still burned along its broken spine. Escape craft blinked out one by one as Viox interceptors erased them with clinical precision. Signal integrity, she asked. Fading, said Lieutenant Cho, but still active. Someone's alive in there. The words settled heavily on the bridge. Trent broke the silence. Council protocol is clear. Interfering with a Dominion suppression action is grounds for sanctions, possibly worse. Yes, Cade said, protocol is very clear. She turned to face him. So is genocide. The Viox transmission channel opened again, unprompted. Human captain, your presence is a violation of standing accords. Withdraw now and this incident will be forgotten. Cade exhaled through her nose. They're confident. They've never been challenged, Trent replied, not by anyone that survived. Cade nodded slowly. Humanity knew that feeling intimately. Earth's own history was littered with empires that believed themselves eternal, right up until the moment they were. Open a wideband channel, she said, public frequency. Trent hesitated. That'll be recorded by half the sector. Good. The channel opened. This is Captain Mara Cade of the Human Expeditionary Fleet, she began, her voice calm, measured, unmistakably human. We are responding to an active distress signal from a civilian population. Our scans confirm non-combatant presence. We request an immediate ceasefire to facilitate evacuation. There was no response for several seconds. Then the Viox answered, not on the public channel, but directly, bypassing protocol. The civilians you speak of are non-compliant subjects. Their termination is authorized. The words were spoken without malice, without anger. Just fact. Cade's fingers tightened. Authorized by whom? She asked. By U.S. That was the moment something shifted, not in the balance of power, but in perception. For centuries, the Concordants had tolerated the Vayaks because they were effective. They kept the outie. Our regions orderly. They crushed rebellions before they spread. They were brutal but predictable. And they had never been forced to justify themselves. Trent leaned closer. Mara, if we do this, if we interfere, there's no going back. Humanity won't be a footnote anymore, we'll be a problem. Cade didn't look at him. We already are, we just haven't realized it yet. Another escape craft vanished in a silent flash. Send the data, she said. Cho's eyes widened. To whom? Everyone, Cade replied. Council channels, trade relays, independent nets, unedited. Within seconds, the raw sensor feeds began propagating images of the burning habitat, the fleeing civilians, the relentless advance of the Vayak's fleet. And beneath it all, the fading SOS, pulsing like a dying heart. The Vayaks reacted instantly. You are disseminating classified material. Cease immediately. No, Cade said simply. For the first time, there was a pause long enough to feel like hesitation. Then the Vayaks did something unexpected. They advanced. Massive ships glided forward, weapons arrays rotating, energy levels spiking. The message was clear. This conversation was over. All ships, Cade said quietly, defensive posture only, no weapons lock, no targeting. Trent turned sharply. Mara. We are not firing first, she said. We will not be the aggressors, not today. The human fleet shifted formation, hulls aligning, shields rising in layered geometries that looked crude compared to Vayak's elegance. But beneath them ran power systems that made Concordance engineers nervous when they first saw the specs. The distance between the fleets closed. One Vayak's cruiser detached from the formation and surged forward, its presence looming on every display. Its primary weapon, a spinal beam capable of cutting moons, charged to a fraction of lethal output. A warning shot. The beam lanced through space, missing the Resolute by kilometers, but close enough that the distortion rocked the human ship, alarms flaring briefly. Shields held, Cho reported, minimal blade-through. Cade didn't flinch. Still no return fire, she said. Trent stared at her. They're testing us. Yes, she agreed, and we're failing their expectations. The Vayak's cruiser fired again, closer this time, a deliberate escalation. The human fleet absorbed it. Shields flared white-hot, then stabilized. Silence followed. On the Vayak's command ship, something unprecedented was happening. Their tactical predictions, built on centuries of encounters, were unraveling. The humans were not retreating, not attacking, not posturing. They were enduring. Another message came through, sharper now. You risk total annihilation for NON signatory life. This is illogical. Cade leaned forward, eyes hard. No, she said. What's illogical is thinking power excuses cruelty. She gestured to Trent. Prep rescue teams, we're going in. Trent's breath caught. Under fire. Under protection, Cade corrected. Hours. The order rippled, Across the fleet, human ships advanced, not toward the Vyeks, but toward the shattered habitat. Smaller craft launched from their bays, armored evacuation vessels, shielded beyond anything the Concordance allowed for non-military use. The Vyeks responded instantly. Interceptors broke formation, weapons hot. Captain Cho warned, "They're targeting the evac craft." Cade's voice dropped to a near whisper. "Then we show them why we survived a death world." "All ships," she said, "activate Guardian Protocol." Across the human fleet, something changed. External armor plates shifted, sliding apart to reveal structures no alien intelligence had ever catalogued. Energy signatures spiked, not weapons, but fields. Vast, overlapping defensive matrices projected outward, interlocking into a single unified barrier that enveloped the evacuation corridor. Vyek's fire slammed into it and stopped. The barrier rippled, absorbed, redistributed the energy harmlessly into space. The human ships didn't budge. For the first time in recorded galactic history, Vyek's weapons failed to achieve their intended effect. Trent stared at the readings. "They can't penetrate." "No," Cade said softly, "they never could. We just never showed them." The Vyek's fleet hesitated, an almost imperceptible delay, but real. Another transmission arrived, stripped of pretense. "What are you?" Cade watched the evac craft slip into the habitat's core, following the SOS beacon. "Help," she replied, "whether you deserve it or not." Deep within the dying structure, human marines breached sealed compartments, pulling terrified, unfamiliar beings from the wreckage. Species Cade had never seen, fragile, desperate, alive. The SOS signal stabilized just enough. Then something else happened. Long-range sensors spiked violently. Cho's voice was tight. "Captain, new contacts coming out of subspace behind the Vyek's fleet." Cade turned back to the display. The incoming signatures were M. Massive, ancient, and unmistakably not human. Trent swallowed. Looks like the Council finally noticed. Cade's gaze hardened. "Oh," she said, "they smelled blood in the water." The galaxy had been watching quietly. Now it was converging. The galaxy did not rush in to save the weak. It rushed in to witness the outcome. From the command bridge of the HFS Resolute, Captain Mara Cade watched the tactical display bloom with new icons, dozens at first, then hundreds, each one representing a fleet that had altered course toward the Vyeks-controlled sector. Ancient houses, trade coalitions, neutral observers, predators smelling opportunity. "They're forming a perimeter," Commander Trent said quietly, "but they're not intervening." "No," Cade replied, "they're taking notes." The evacuation continued behind humanity's defensive wall. Human marines moved with ruthless efficiency through the shattered habitat, guided by the stabilized SOS signal. Every rescued civilian was a silent accusation against the Vyeks' narrative of containment. But the Vyeks were no longer focused on the civilians. They were focused on humanity. Across the void, the Vyeks' flagship, an obsidian monolith wrapped in stellar energy, pivoted slowly, its attention fully shifting away from the habitat and onto the human fleet. Massive internal reactors flared as weapon systems previously held in reserve began to awaken. Captain Cho warned, "They're powering up strategic assets, not cruiser grade. This is extinction level." Trent looked at Cade. "This is it. They've decided restraint is no longer useful." Cade nodded once, "Then neither is ours." For 2 centuries, humanity had hidden behind treaties, behind diplomacy, behind carefully curated displays of capability. Not because they were weak, but because they remembered what unchecked escalation did to civilizations. Earth's history had taught them that victory without restraint was just delayed ruin. But restraint did not mean submission. "All ships," Cade said, her voice carrying across every deck, every hull, every listening ear, "this is Fleet Command. We are transitioning from Guardian Protocol to Sentinel Doctrine." Across the human formation, systems long dormant came online. The Guardian fields reconfigured, not just absorbing energy now, but redirecting it, shaping it. The fleet's formation tightened, geometry precise beyond anything biological reflex could achieve. The human ships were no longer individual vessels. They were a single, distributed machine. "What the hell is Sentinel Doctrine?" Trent asked, eyes locked on the readouts. Cade didn't look away. "The reason we were allowed into the Concordance at all." The Vyeks fired first. Not a warning, not a test. A full-spectrum annihilation volley. Beams of compressed stellar matter, gravity shear weapons, quantum destabilizers, arsenals perfected over eons, slammed into the human formation with enough force to sterilize planets. The watching fleets leaned in, and the human fleet did not break. The Sentinel grid absorbed the impact, not as a shield, but as a system. Energy flowed through the lattice, redistributed across hundreds of emitters, vented into controlled microsingularities that collapsed harmlessly milliseconds later. The space where the human fleet stood boiled. When the distortion cleared, the ships were still there. Intact. Unmoved. A ripple passed through the observing armadas, not fear, not yet, but something far more dangerous. "Respect. They just tanked a Dominion purge strike," Trent whispered. That's not possible." "It is," Cade said, "if you assume the universe is hostile." The Vyeks hesitated. Only for a moment. Then their fleet surged forward, closing distance aggressively, relying on mass and firepower to overwhelm what their senses still could not fully explain. Cade raised a hand. "Now," she said. The human response was surgical. No grand beams, no planet crackers, no terror weapons. Instead, space itself betrayed the Vyeks. Localized gravity wells bloomed inside their formation, not crushing, not destructive, but disruptive. Ships drifted out of alignment. Fire control solutions collapsed. Command and control links desynchronized as human electronic warfare flooded every known and unknown spectrum. Vyeks ships began to collide. Not catastrophically. Deliberately. Captain Cho said, awe bleeding into her voice, We're not targeting hulls, we are targeting assumptions. Cade allowed herself a thin smile. Exactly. Humanity had studied every major power from the moment they entered the galaxy, not to emulate them, but to understand how they thought, how they planned, how they failed. The Vyeks had never fought an enemy that refused to play by established paradigms. They adapted quickly, but not quickly enough. A Vyeks battle group attempted to flank the human formation, only to find itself isolated as spacetime folded subtly around it, cutting it off far. Reinforcement, human ships didn't destroy them. They contained them. Message coming in, Trent said. Vyeks command channel, priority override. Cade nodded, put it through. The Vyeks voice that emerged was different now. Still controlled, still cold. But strained. Humanity, you have made your point. Withdraw and this engagement ends. Cade leaned back in her chair. End how, she asked, with the civilians dead, with the survivors erased, with the truth buried. A pause. The subject population is no longer a priority. That's not an answer, Cade said. That's an evasion. Behind her, Trent stiffened. Captain, the evac teams are reporting something. The species we're rescuing, they weren't rebels. They weren't insurgents. Cade felt a chill. What were they? Witnesses. The word hung heavy. Trent continued. They documented a Vyeks purge 2 cycles ago, an entire system cleared to secure a resource corridor. They were transmitting evidence to the Council. Cade's eyes hardened. That's why the SOS was ignored, she said. That's why the response was contained. The Vyeks spoke again, sharper now. This discussion is irrelevant. Withdraw or be destroyed. Cade stood. No, she said quietly. And then, louder, broadcasting not just to the Vyeks, but to every watching fleet, every silent observer hiding behind neutrality. No, she repeated, because this isn't just about them. She gestured, and the bridge display shifted. The raw data, unfiltered, undeniable, flooded the public channels. Evidence of purges, of erased systems, of species quietly removed from galactic history because they were inconvenient. The watching fleets erupted into chaos. Council channels lit up with overlapping demands. Trade coalitions began pulling back from Vyeks space. Long-standing alliances fractured in real time. For the first time in millennia, the Vyeks were not controlling the narrative. They were losing it. This is unprecedented, Trent said. You're burning their legitimacy. They burned it themselves, Cade replied. We're just holding up a mirror. The Vyeks fleet regrouped, tighter now, angrier. Their flagship's core glowed brighter, energy readings spiking into ranges no one had ever recorded. They're charging something big, Cho warned. Something irreversible. Cade nodded slowly. All ships, she said, voice steady, prepare phase black. Trent's head snapped toward her. Phase black, that's Mara, that's a declaration. Yes, she said, it is. The human fleet shifted again. This time, the change was unmistakable. Weapons that had never been fired outside simulations powered up, devices built not to conquer territory, but to end wars before they could spread. Tools born from a species that knew exactly how fragile civilizations could be. Across the void, the Viox flagship unleashed its final gambit, a weapon designed to erase entire fleets in a single act of dominance. Cade watched the charge build, and she did not blink. "Execute," she said. The space went dark. Not black, but empty. Sensors across the sector screamed as reality itself bent under the weight of human intent. The watching fleets recoiled, emergency protocols firing as they struggled to comprehend what they were seeing. When the distortion cleared, the Viox superweapon was gone. Not destroyed. Disconnected. Its energy dispersed, its systems inert, as if the universe had simply refused to cooperate with it. Silence followed. Then a single, trembling transmission from the Viox flagship. "What have you done?" Cade's voice carried across the void, calm and unyielding. "We survived," she said, "and we learned." She stared at the broken habitat, at the rescued civilians now safe within human hulls. "And now," she added, "so will the rest of the galaxy." But even as the Viox reeled, new alerts flared across the bridge. Joe's voice was tight with alarm. "Captain, multiple hyperspace signatures, not Viox, not Council." Cade turned back to the display. The incoming contacts dwarfed everything that had come before. Ancient war forms. Dormant powers awakened by the sudden realization that the balance of the galaxy had shifted. Drent swallowed. "Mara," he said quietly, "I think we just rang a very old bell." Cade's gaze hardened, not with fear but with resolve. "Then," she said, "it's time to see who answers." The ancient fleets did not arrive in formation. They unfolded. Space rippled as hyperspace apertures opened like wounds across the sector, each one disgorging vessels that defied modern classification. Some were vast beyond comprehension, ringed constructs older than recorded history. Others were lean, predatory shapes that seemed less built than grown. Their energy signatures were alien even to the Viox, resonating on frequencies abandoned by contemporary physics. On the bridge of the HFS Resolute, silence reigned. "These aren't just old powers," Commander Trent said quietly. "THS are custodians, founders, the ones the Concordance mythologized." "They were supposed to be gone," Lieutenant Cho whispered. Cade's expression was grim. "They were never gone, just waiting." For tens of thousands of years, the galaxy had existed under a fragile equilibrium. Empires rose and fell, but always within invisible boundaries, lines that were never crossed, rules never tested too hard. Humanity had just shattered one of those rules. The ancient fleets did not immediately act. They observed, silent, unreadable. Their presence alone was enough to paralyze the sector. Viox ships ceased all aggressive movement, their one-sprout formation tightening inward like a wounded animal. A transmission cut through the noise. Not Viox. Not Council. The signal bypassed every known encryption layer, appearing simultaneously on all frequencies, all languages, all minds capable of perception. This conflict has exceeded its bounds. The voice was not a voice, it was a consensus, many wills speaking as one. We are the archivists of continuity. Trent's breath caught. They're real. Cade stepped forward. This is Captain Mara Cade of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. We are responding to an act of mass civilian extermination. If this violates your bounds, then your bounds are broken. A pause followed, long, heavy, ancient. Humanity, you are new. You do not yet understand the cost of intervention. Cade didn't hesitate. We understand cost, she said. Our entire history is paying it. She gestured, and the rescued civilians appeared on the shared channel, huddled, wounded, alive. Beings who should have been erased, now breathing because someone had answered their call. We also understand something else, Cade continued. Silence is a choice, and it always sides with the powerful. The ancient fleets shifted, subtle movements, but enough to send shockwaves through space-time. The archivists responded. The VIREX maintained order. By fear, Cade shot back. By erasure, by deciding who deserved to exist. She leaned forward, voice steel-hard. That's not order, that's convenience. For the first time, something like uncertainty rippled through the ancient presence. Behind them, the Concordance Council finally spoke, fractured, desperate, overlapping transmissions pleading for mediation, for restraint, for a return to proper channels. Cade ignored them. The archivists turned their attention to the VIREX flagship. VIREX Dominion, present justification. The VIREX answer came slowly, carefully assembled. We ensured stability. We removed THRATS before they could destabilize the galaxy. Cade's laugh was sharp, humorless. You mean you removed witnesses? She transmitted the full archive again, now amplified, now undeniable. Entire systems wiped clean. Cultures erased without declaration, all in the name of efficiency. The ancient fleets absorbed the data in silence. Then, stability built on extermination is not stability. The words echoed like a verdict. The VIREX flagship trembled, not physically, but in presence. Their certainty, their ancient right to rule through dominance, cracked. This precedent is dangerous, the VIREX insisted. If every emerging species intervenes, then no one gets to quietly commit atrocities anymore, Cade interrupted. Yes, that is dangerous to people like you. A long pause followed. The archivists spoke again, and this time the weight of their judgment bent reality. Humanity, you possess power disproportionate to your age. Why did you hide it? Cade looked around her bridge, at the men and women who carried the scars of a violent world, who had inherited a legacy of near-extinction events and hard-won survival. Because we know what happens when power becomes identity, she said, because we've lived under it, because we didn't want to be feared. She straightened. But we will not be complicit. The ancient fleets reoriented, not toward humanity, toward the VIREX. VIREX Dominion, your mandate is revoked. The declaration hit like a supernova. Across the sector, VIEX command and control networks collapsed, not hacked, not destroyed, but unmade. Authority structures dissolved as ancient failsafes triggered, systems locking down under protocols older than the Dominion itself. Their ships went inert, not destroyed, neutralized. The watching fleets erupted into chaos. Some withdrew immediately, unwilling to be near whatever humanity had awakened. Others moved closer, desperate to reassess alliances that now meant very little. Trent exhaled shakily. They just ended them. No, Cade said softly. They stopped them. The archivists turned back to humanity. The galaxy will change because of you. Yes, Cade agreed. It already has. You could claim territory, demand authority, impose your own order. Every sensor, every mind, every watching civilization leaned in for the answer. Humanity had won. Now came the test. Cade's response was Immerse. Diet. We won't, she said. We didn't come to rule. We came because someone asked for help. She gestured to the rescued civilians again. Our power exists for one reason, so that when a voice cries out into the dark, it doesn't go unanswered just because it's inconvenient. The ancient fleets were silent. Then, this position is unusual. Cade allowed herself a tired smile. Get used to it. The archivists conferred, vast intelligences, exchanging conclusions at speeds beyond comprehension. At last they spoke. Humanity will be recognized as a guardian species. Gasps rippled across the sector. You will not rule, you will not command, but when extinction is threatened, when silence would be complicity, you may intervene. Cade nodded once. That's all we ever wanted. The ancient fleets began to withdraw, folding back into the dark, their purpose fulfilled, for now. As they vanished, the galaxy was left reeling. Empires recalculated. Councils reformed. Species long oppressed began to speak, carefully at first, then louder, now knowing that somewhere out there was a fleet that listened. On the bridge of the Resolute, the SOS signal finally went quiet. Not because it had failed, but because it was no longer needed. Cho wiped her eyes. Signal terminated. Survivors secure. Trent looked at Cade. History's going to remember this moment. Cade shook her head gently. No, history will remember what comes after. She gazed out at the stars, unchanged, indifferent, vast. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had done something far more dangerous. They had changed what power meant. And from that day forward, when something screamed into the void, when a civilization faced erasure behind closed borders and quiet agreements, there would always be a question echoing through the dark. Did the Deathworlders hear it? And more often than not, they did.